Well, hello and welcome to the video. Before you start your trucking career, there are a few things that you need to consider and think about, know, and hopefully do that will save you a lot of headaches, a lot of trouble, and will dramatically increase your chances for long-term success. So I wrote down a few things we want to talk about here for you. The first thing is that you need to spend a little bit of time doing some research and learning about trucking. You need to have a better understanding of what it is that you're getting yourself into. Now, if you come from a trucking family or you've been working around trucks and you've been around truck drivers and trucking companies and that kind of stuff, that's great. You still probably want to look at some of the details that you may not have considered or looked into from that outside capacity, just being around folks that do it, but you're certainly better off than somebody that's coming into it brand new, that's never been around trucking. And if that's your case, it's not a big deal either. But what you do need to do is make sure before you start talking to recruiters and you start talking to truck driving schools, get out a pad of paper, a notebook, a pen or pencil, and start doing some research and learning about trucking yourself before you just jump into it. That's one of the biggest mistakes that people make coming into the industry, is that they haven't really done the research and they don't fully understand what it is that they're getting themselves into until after they've already started, and somewhere along the process they realize that they've made the wrong choice. Trucking is an excellent career for many people, but it's absolutely incompatible for others. And for a lot of folks are just going to have issues with some things that trucking is going to require from you. And you need to know that, hopefully, before you go out and invest thousands of dollars in weeks of your time going through a truck driving school, possibly even onboarding with a company, going through their programs and stuff, and get out there and then figure out that you just made a bad choice. So I hope trucking is the right choice for you, but you need to try to sort of confirm that before you just jump into it. And as I said, that's a big mistake a lot of new truckers make, is that they didn't do any homework, didn't do any research. Their first point of contact was either they called a truck driving school blindly with no information, or they just talked to some recruiter or a recruiting event or spoke to a recruiter, and that's their total sources of information. And that's not good to have only that as your sources of information. You're going to definitely need to be talking to admissions people to get into a program, and you're definitely going to be talking to recruiters at some point in time to get a job, but that's not ideally your first point of contact. Your first introduction to the industry needs to be research, figuring out what it is and figuring out whether you're compatible with that or not. So that's number one, research and learn about trucking. How do you do that? You can do some research on YouTube. Now, of course, everything you see on YouTube, you got to take with a grain of salt as well. Everybody's got their agendas. Everybody's trying to sell stuff, even if it's just getting people to watch their videos so they can get views and be monetized and make money that way. So, you have to kind of read between the lines and a lot of stuff. But if you look at enough videos, you'll be able to see some patterns there. There are also Facebook groups that are specific to truckers and people interested in being in trucking that you can seek out and join and talk to people that are actually in the business, as well as other people that are in the process of getting into the business, and share information and get stuff. Now, just like a lot of things on Facebook and other parts of the internet, you have some of them that are just ate up with nonsense. That's fine if that's what you want to do, but if you're trying to learn, that's not where you want to be. You need to seek out, find good groups, good communities, good sources of information that are actually there to help each other and share information and can answer questions and things of that nature for you. There are also online courses that you can take. There are plenty of courses on Udemy that are cost effective, not very expensive at all, including my courses, but there are courses by other people as well. There are books on Amazon. There are also searches that you can do in Google. You can look up information, make your own notes, begin to compile some data. Go up to a truck stop, buy some coffee, have a meal, talk to a couple of truck drivers. Don't talk to one. You might get the one that's cranky in a bad mood that day, tells you trucking sucks, and you wish you'd done something else, but then you find out he's been doing it for 30 years. So it's obviously that he didn't really feel that way, or he wouldn't still be doing it. Or you might get the other guy that just started, or for whatever reason says it's great. It's all beautiful. Everything is wonderful, which is, neither one of those is necessarily a completely, totally accurate picture. But if you talk to several truck drivers on a few different days combined with all those other things I just told you about, doing some research, you'll begin to get a much better picture. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about money and dealing with recruiters and that kind of stuff a little further into this video. Next thing I want you to do is, if you've done that, you've done some research, looked into trucking, you still think it is something that you want to do and that you're interested in continuing to pursue it, you need to also make sure that you are going to be compatible with trucking. You need to be sure that your driving record is going to be something that's good enough to allow you to get a job. Driving records are very important in trucking. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking that they have a separate driving record for their CDL, that's your commercial driver's license, and one for your personal vehicle operator's record. That's not true. You have one MVR, one motor vehicle record, one driving record. Everything counts. And trucking companies are going to definitely look at your driving record. A lot of people are also say, well, I haven't been a truck driver, so it's not going to matter. Oh, it matters, because it shows your mindset and your patterns of behavior and how you think and how big of a risk you're likely to be. For example, if you have somebody who has numerous following too close violations, that's a pattern of behavior. That's a dangerous individual. Insurance companies are not going to like that, and they're going to put pressure on the trucking companies not to hire you, or they might outright not allow the trucking company to hire you because they won't insure you. So if there's somebody that has a pattern of running stop signs, or even patterns of registration things being expired, you say, what the heck has that got to do with anything? It's not a moving violation. It's a pattern of reckless disregard for the safety rules and regulations and the safety of the public. As far as risk managers, meaning safety directors, personnel directors, insurance company people, the people that make the decisions whether you get a job or not, are concerned. Don't have to like it, don't have to agree with it, but you need to understand it. So the cleaner your driving record is, the better off you are. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that a ticket or two is going to stop you from getting a job necessarily. But do understand that it depends on what the violations are, how old they are, whether there's a pattern or not, and the specific hiring criteria of the company. And if you have any doubts, once you begin to select the companies that you think you might want to go to, call them up and talk to them. Say, hey, look, here's my, before we get too far into talking about this, I want to make sure I'm eligible for being hired at your company. I've got this, this, and this, or I've got this on my record. Is that going to be a problem? If I go to truck driving school, is that going to stop me from coming on board with you? So you don't want to find that out after the fact, after you spent weeks in a truck driving school and committed yourself to possibly thousands of dollars for tuition. So you want to figure that out before you get into it. So make sure you're compatible that way. You also want to make sure you're compatible and able to pass a DOT physical. It's not really terribly hard to do, but there are vision requirements. There are other medical requirements, hearing, range of motion, different things. And there are some allowances for special consideration with additional evaluation and so forth. So, certain disabilities or certain impairments are not necessarily going to completely stop you from becoming a truck driver, depending on what it is. But that you want to also figure out and make sure you're going to be able to get your DOT physical. But in general, somebody is walking around able to do normal work that can hear and bend down, stoop, squat, and that kind of stuff, climbing in and out of trucks, do the job, doesn't have significant blood pressure, vision, hearing problems, not going to have a great big problem being able to pass a DOT physical. If you have any doubt, you can go down to any provider that does DOT physicals and get your own physical. It might cost you anywhere from $75 to $150, but you can go down and say, I want a DOT physical. And they will do a physical for you, and then you will know whether you can pass or not, if there's any issues or problems. Now, and as well, many of the companies that will consider hiring you will pay for a physical in exchange for a commitment to work for them. So do understand that if you go and pay that money for a physical, the motor carrier you get to work with may or may not accept that brand new physical that you have. They may make you go back and get another one, or they may make you go get one from another doctor entirely. But the doctors are using the same criteria. If they're certified to do DOT physicals, they're using the same criteria in accordance with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regs, so it shouldn't be a big issue, and at least you know. So that's one way to do it. If you have any doubts, if you have any concerns or issues about it, you can go get your own physical at your own expense. If you're otherwise, you feel like you're in pretty good shape and stuff, then it shouldn't be an issue. You can just go through the process. Hopefully, your motor carrier pay for it. Talk about drug testing. There is a lot of different stuff going on with states in terms of what they allow with drugs and all that kind of stuff. But the federal motor carrier safety regulations, which is what are put out by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, which is a sub-agency of the Department of Transportation, prohibit drugs. Regardless what your state laws are, all that kind of stuff doesn't matter at the current time. You cannot do drugs and drive big trucks. It's that simple. So if it's somebody that has an interest in doing drugs, they might want to find some other way to make a living. Truck driving is probably not the right career for them because they're going to pop positive on a drug test. And when they do, their trucking career is going to be severely impacted, if not over. There's all kinds of hoops and hurdles they have to go through if they test positive on a drug test. Yeah, there's costs and expenses and additional testing. And there are some motor carriers that would just automatically discharge that employee, terminate the employment. They won't be eligible for rehire. Others will put them in a probationary status and monitor them more closely and do additional testing, that kind of stuff. So once again, you do what you got to do. But in my opinion, if people that want to do drugs, that's fine. It's your right, your prerogative. You want to choose that, but it's not compatible with a career in trucking. So take that into consideration because they are going to drug test you. They'll drug test you before you even go to school. You have to do a pre-employment, even though you're not being employed. That's the terminology that DOT uses. You have to take and pass a DOT drug test, and it's going to go on record. And even while you're in school, you can be selected for a random test. You can also be identified and selected for reasonable suspicion. There's also post-accident testing. And there's lots of things you'll learn about in the course of your training, but do understand you're going to be drug tested, and you can be alcohol tested as well. And there's specific requirements for that. So make sure you're able to and willing to be able to pass the drug and alcohol test and requirements. Make sure you can pass the physical. Make sure you're going to be able to do the job. Trucking is not really a terribly physical job in most cases. There are certain jobs you can get that are hand unloading freight and doing things of that nature. Those can be very demanding, but the typical job of a drive-in truck driver is not terribly physical. You do have to climb in and out of the truck. You have to bend, stoop, and squat and be able to look under the truck and do your inspections. You occasionally have to climb in and out of the trailer. You have to be able to open and close trailer doors. It's not a physical job. It's more of a mental job once you learn it. You might have some sore muscles as you're initially learning how to drive and handling a steering wheel and that kind of stuff. And certainly if you are using a standard transmission truck where you're actually shifting and not using automatic. That's another thing to understand. A lot of schools these days and a lot of companies use automatic trucks. It's wonderful. It makes it easier for training. It makes it easier for driving. But if you train and are tested in an automatic truck, you're going to have a restriction on your CDL that you're only allowed to drive commercial equipment that has automatic transmissions in it. Depending on what you want to do, may or may not be a big issue, but something to be aware of. If you're thinking about going to a company that has regular transmissions like 13s, 10 speeds, 9 speeds, Super 10s, all that kind of stuff, you're going to need to get an unrestricted license, which means you need to get training and test with a vehicle that has a regular transmission in it. My truck has a 13-speed in it, and I've driven automatics when they came out. I personally like automatics, and I certainly like them for training purposes. It's easier on the instructors, it's easier on the equipment, it's easier on the student. And most students, if they're going to a big motor carrier, they're almost certainly going to go into an automatic truck. So it's not really an issue unless they're going to a smaller carrier, an older motor carrier that's got older equipment that may, probably is going to want to put them in a truck that has a regular transmission. Or if they're thinking about very soon becoming an owner-operator and they're looking at buying an older truck or a truck that has a standard transmission. And that's another matter, and I cover that in other videos, so I'm not going to beat it up here. But I would recommend if you're brand new to trucking, unless you have extensive business experience, do not become an owner-operator or a lease purchase driver, any of that stuff right out of the gate. Become a company driver for at least 9 months to your first year. You want to know why? Watch my other videos. I explain it all the time in all kinds of videos, but you need to start out as a company driver first. That's my advice. It's your life. You do what you want to do. All right. So again, that's verify that you're compatible with trucking and that trucking is compatible with you. Make sure that you meet the initial criteria and stuff and that you understand what you're going to be doing in terms of work hours and time away from home, all that kind of stuff, and that you're willing to do that and that your family's going to be okay with that because you're going to be working a lot of hours and there's going to be days and sometimes multiple days you're probably not going to be home, especially when you're first starting out. So verify compatibility. Next, you want to choose your truck driver training school, your trucking school. There are all kinds of different schools available to you. There are schools that are run out of community colleges. There are schools that run as contract providers through community colleges. There are private schools that somebody started a business and that they just own a truck, or maybe it might be multiple trucks, but they're not affiliated with a technical school or a community college or any other kind of formal educational thing. They're just a standalone business that is licensed in the state and under the authority of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration through DOT to be able to conduct training, meaning that they have a DOT number and that they've been licensed by their state or they've met their current state requirements to be able to offer and charge you for training. In my opinion, there are two primary purposes that training schools serve. Now, there are different people with different opinions, so understand that. But my opinion is this. The first and the primary purpose that a truck driver training school serves is to teach you the basic, essential, foundational, and fundamental skills that are necessary for you to be able to demonstrate in order to pass your skills exam and get your CDL, that is your commercial driver's license. So that's the main purpose, to train you sufficiently so that you can get your CDL. That's the primary purpose of a truck driver training school, in my opinion. The secondary purpose of a good truck driver training school is to make sure that they are teaching you those things and additional foundational skills that you can continue to build upon as you go to your first trucking job and throughout your trucking career. So they're going to teach you some things that you need to learn and develop and make into habits that you follow throughout your truck driving career. And as you gain additional instruction and as you gain additional experience by doing these things over and over and over, they become deeply ingrained habits in you and that they will serve you well and help keep you safe and help keep the people around you safe. That's the two primary purposes of a truck driver training school. If you have good instructors, they can share some of their stories and their experiences with you. They can give you some insights into the industry and what they've done and other people that they know and things of that nature. So they can be a wealth of information that way as well. But just keep that in mind. Some schools think that they can train you to be a completely professional driver and you can go out there and keep pace with experienced drivers and do anything they can right out of truck driving school, and that's a load of bull. Unless the truck driver training program is 3 months or longer and actually delivers real freight and probably has a 1-to-1 training ratio, meaning 1 student to 1 instructor, or maybe no more than 2 students to 1 instructor, and you're actually hauling and delivering freight and it's at least 3 months or longer, not likely to be able to get you up to where you need to be. There are certain things that you can learn in school. Again, as I just discussed, that is your initial skills, so you can pass your skills test and you can learn the fundamentals, so you can begin to develop those foundational skills on top of that, but that's about it. That's the roles and goals of truck driver training schools, and you're going to need additional training on top of that once you graduate, once you go and get your first job. And all good trucking companies know that. And good trucking companies with good training programs are going to make sure that you get some additional training and some real world experience. We'll talk about that too in just a minute as well. But choose your school. Now, how you pay for your school, there's a variety of different ways to do that. Many community colleges have workforce departments. They have people working there specifically that they're a big part of what they do is to help you find funding and help you get your school paid for. They can find grants, they can find loans, they can get discounts, they can find employers who are willing to pay for part of it. If you, a variety of different ways that they can get funding for you so that you can get into school and take your class. Truck driver training school, if it's through a private school where somebody's having to cover all the costs on their own, they're charging you, it's probably going to be at least $4,500, $5,000 plus dollars. If not, they're not going to be able to keep the doors open. I mean, it costs a lot of money to own a truck and a trailer and put fuel in it and keep the maintenance up on it and all the compliance issues and headaches. Pay the instructors, even if the person that owns the company is an instructor, you still got to make a living after have a fair amount of take-home income after taxes and expenses and cover all the risk associated with doing that business. So if they're charging less than $4,500 per student, I don't know how they're keeping the doors open, because it needs to be at least that much. Some of them charge double that or close to double that. It might be $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, even $12,000 for your school. So if I were to open a school today, I would probably charge around $7,000 per student. I know some do less than that, but like I said, to provide quality equipment, quality training, that kind of stuff as a totally private entity, it would probably be in the ballpark, in my opinion, of around $7,000. I do know of some schools out there, for whatever reason, that charge somewhere around $4,500. If you go to a community college or you go through some school that has access to funding and grants and things of that nature, they can get that down lower than that. A lot of cases, it might be half as much. In some cases, they can even get it down to where it's only $100 or $200, if that. They might even be able to find a way to get you something to cover all of it in some cases, but they can certainly knock it down a significant amount. So don't let the money issue stop you. If you don't have the money to pay for your own school, go talk to the financial aid department, talk to the workforce people in your local community college, find out if they have a truck driver training program, and if not, ask if they know of one that's nearby and somebody you can talk to. But there are people that can help you get funding and financing for that. Another option is to go through an internal trucking company's training program. Not necessarily a horrible way to do it, but do understand most companies are going to make you sign a contract. You are agreeing to work for them for some period of time, which may be a year, more, but typically it's a year. And if you don't stay with them for that year, you're probably going to be under contract and on the hook for their training program. It may be priced at a reasonable amount. I already told you, a reasonable amount, around $7,000, $8,000. It may be less than that, maybe $4,500, or it may be significantly more. They may have inflated it to cover their risk, and it might be a $15,000 program. So be careful about signing on to trucking companies' programs without comparing that to every other training school in the area, seeing what they're charging, what's available, and that sort of thing. And just remember, if they have you sign a contract, you're making a legal commitment. Even if they call it an agreement or an understanding, whatever, if they have you put your signature on a piece of paper or on a screen, e-sign, electronically signing a document that is a contract, you're committing yourself to being on the hook for tuition or reimbursing them for money if you don't meet the terms of your contract. So if you agree to drive for a year and you don't do that, they're going to come after you for the money, or they could if they chose to. Just be aware of that. That's all I'm saying. So choose your school. Look up the school's ratings online, look up reviews on the school. If you get a chance, try to find some students. If you can, talk to current or former students. Generally, schools get a reputation, good or bad. It's not that hard to find information on them, figure out which ones are good and which ones are not. But if you can do that, also visit the school before you sign up for them. Tell them you want to go out and look at their driving range and you want to look at their training trucks. If they have an old dilapidated training truck, wheels, bare tires on it, that kind of stuff that they're using, and beat up, dusty old lot someplace, you might want to think twice about that. Not saying a gravel, there are a lot of schools that use a gravel lot. I'm just saying if it's something with a lot of rutted out potholes and other garbage nonsense, and it's obvious that they're not putting much investment into their equipment, into the driving range, into their program, you may want to be concerned about that and consider looking for somebody that puts a little bit more investment and puts money and time and puts effort into running a more quality training program, because it's going to make a difference for you. So find a good program with good equipment, a good area, and find something that's funding that's acceptable to you at a cost that's affordable to you. So choose your school. Once you sign up for your school, they will begin to walk you through the process. They're going to send you documents. It might be electronically, it might be in the mail, might have you come into the office depending on the circumstances, but they're going to have you sign a bunch of stuff, applications and things of that nature. They might have additional documents you have to sign if you're trying to get funding and grants and that sort of thing. You're going to, somewhere along the route, be required to go do a physical, or if you have one that they'll accept, they'll get a copy of it. If not, they may have you go get a physical. They may pay for it, may have you pay for it. It works, it just depends on the program. They're going to pull a copy of your motor vehicle record. They're going to look at your driving record. They're going to require you to do a drug test. Most schools will pay for that. Some may not. Some might require you to pay for that. But you're going to have to do a drug test. You're going to have to provide all your documents. You're going to have to get all these things taken care of. And they're going to want copies of all that stuff. They're going to want a copy of your driver's license, a copy of your commercial learner's permit, which you're going to have to go down to DMV and test for that. Some schools have a commercial learner's permit prep class or course that you can go through that will walk you through the little study guide and give you some other useful information. It's beneficial if a school offers that, go to it. Usually, 2-4 hours long, something like that, maybe a day long. It's not too long, and it will help you if it's a good instructors and a good school to walk you through that. But you can also just go down to your local DMV or Motor Vehicle Administration, whatever they call it, where you're at. Tell them that you want a CDL study guide, and they should hand you one or tell you how you can go about getting one. And then study that thing cover to cover. Make sure you read it, comprehend it, make notes, go over it. I'd recommend studying it for at least a weekend, Saturday and Sunday, most of the day on both days, and then schedule your test in accordance with the instructions of the place where you're at. Whatever your DMV or MVA says, some places you can just walk in, some places you got to schedule a time and a date and a time in advance, and then do what they tell you to do, go in there and take that and get your learner's permit. Don't do that until it's close to time to go to school, till you're sure you're getting ready to start, but definitely going to need that learner's permit before you go and sit down for the first day in class, ideally. So get your learner's permit. Then once you are enrolled in school, show up on time. I want you to remember this little saying I'm about to give you and burn it into your brain stem from this day ever forward. And that is, early is on time is late. Early is on time, and on time is late. Okay, don't be late for your classes. Don't be late for your pickups and deliveries in trucking. Trucking runs on schedules. And if you can't even get to your class on time, you're going to have a hard time getting to your pickups and deliveries. Your career is not going to go well right out of the box. And I understand that too. Once you get out on your own, which we're kind of putting the cart in front of the horse a little bit, because you got to get through all these other things before you got to worry about delivering freight. But don't ever be trying to arrive, or say you got an 8 o'clock in the morning appointment for delivery. Your target should be to get to that delivery point by about 7. Okay, you want to try to get there about an hour early or so, because there's so many things that can happen. You can have a backup, you can have a couple of long traffic lights, you can have any little thing that happens. And if you're trying to get there right at 8 o'clock, you're going to be late. So remember what I said, early is on time is late. Burn that into your brainstem and start practicing that at school. Showing up for your classes is disrespectful to your instructors, is disrespectful to yourself, and it's not going to bode well for your employment in the industry or even if you're owner operator. You need to be on time. And just as I said, early is on time is late, so be early for your class and stuff. You don't need to show up for class an hour early, but be there at least 15-20 minutes early. Don't try to show up right at the last minute, or again, you're going to be walking into class 5 or 10 minutes late. That's not going to be looked upon favorably. And you say, well, why does it matter? Well, okay, I'll give you an example. Let's say that you're in a truck driver training school and you're on time every day, meaning you're early. You're early for class, you're working your butt off, but you're having difficulty with your pre-trip inspection. It causes a lot of people problems, or you're having difficulty with backing. You need some extra practice. You go up to the scale house, or you go up to wherever they're doing the testing at, you make it through the course, but you get up there and you fail. Okay. Instructors that see that you're doing your absolute best are going to be willing to put extra time into helping you. I myself would help you if you had shown up for class all the time. If you're early and you're busting your tail, and for whatever reason you're just having some issues, I would come in myself, or stay later in the afternoon, or come in on a Saturday or Sunday when I'm scheduled to be off, and work with you for a few hours if you're doing everything that you possibly can. Now, if you've been late for every class or most classes, do you think I'm going to use my personal time to put extra effort into you? No, I'm not going to. And most instructors aren't either. You get back what you put out. So, you want to be respected, show up for classes on time, and then put the effort in while you're there to do your absolute best in school. And the same thing when you get out there in the trucking industry, put that same kind of effort into your career. Take pride in what you do the best job you possibly can. While you're in school, focus, as I mentioned, and study. And you need to understand this too. The pre-trip is not done in reality the way that you're being taught in school. Shocker. Nobody that drives a truck for a living spends 45 minutes to 90 minutes or longer running around a truck, properly and securely mounted, not cracked, broke, loose, missing, not leaking, not chafing, all that. Every single item on there, they're talking to themselves. They don't do that, and even they're not doing that mentally. They're not going around doing every single little thing, but they are looking at all those components. And that's the key that you need to understand. You have to learn the components of the truck, which is why it is taught that way. If you're new to trucking, you don't understand what a pitman arm is yet, a drag link, a castle nut. Okay, there's all kinds of additional terminology you're going to learn what these parts are. So that's one of the reasons it's hammered in that way, is to make sure that you understand the importance of the components of the truck, what can go wrong with them, and how to inspect them for that, and make sure that they're road ready for your safety of the people around you, and for efficiency. So you won't be broke down the road. You certainly don't want pieces of your truck coming off while you're going down the road, and that can happen if inspections are not done correctly. Example, front steer axle, if it has hub oil seals on it. If that hub oil is allowed to get low, let's say it develops a leak, nobody's inspecting the truck, all the oil leaks out, and keep running, eventually the bearings will spin off, eventually the whole wheel assembly, wheel and tire, can come off the truck. Now imagine if you're driving down the road and your wheel comes off your truck and you're running the speed limit on the interstate in Virginia, 70 miles an hour, maybe going around a curve. What do you think is going to happen to you? It's not going to end well. And that does happen, by the way. It is possible for wheels to come off of trucks. That's just one example. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to make sure that you understand there's a reason that you need to learn how to do your inspections, and the reason that you're being taught this particular long-winded way is to make sure you understand what you're looking at, and to make sure that you are able to demonstrate those skills satisfactorily to a skills examiner so you can get your CDL in the first place. Once you get out on the road, yes, you're still going to do your inspections, but you're not going to spend that amount of time doing it. You'll do them much quicker. It's a lot easier. But what I was going to tell you is, when you're in school from day one, when they give you a study sheet for your pre-trip inspections, you need to have that thing in your pocket, or a copy of that in your pocket with you at all times. And while other students are out there doing their thing where they're practicing backing or they're practicing their pre-trip, don't just stand there daydreaming or BSing with the other students or instructors. Get your sheet out and go through that and study it. When you're at home and the family's watching TV, you need to be studying that sheet. Before you go to bed, study the sheet. When you get up in the morning, study the sheet. That thing needs to become part of your body. You need to have it on you at all times and go over it and over it and over it some more, and practice, drill, and rehearse. And if you do that, when it gets to test day, you're going to ace your pre-trip. It's not going to be a problem. People that don't do that very often fail their pre-trip on the first attempt, because they're DMV examiners or motor vehicle administration examiners, whatever you want to call them in your area, are nitpicky on those things. And they're nitpicky for a reason. They want to make sure you know that stuff. So understand you're going to need to put extra time, not just the time that you're on the range or in the classroom with your school. You need to put your own time into doing that homework and additional time that you have as downtime in between students doing things. Study that stuff. All right. Let's see. Once you get through all this stuff and you graduate from the school, you've completed the school training, passed their test, you've gone down to DMV or wherever they send you to do your test, or a third-party test or skills examiner, whatever. You've passed your skills test and you have your CDL, your commercial driver's license. it's time to choose a company. And probably before that date, the school that you go to is probably going to have recruiters come in and talk to you, probably several of them. And you need to choose a good company to go to. Now, that's beyond the scope of this video. I'm not going to get too far into detail. Just remember, when you're talking to recruiters are salespeople. Everybody's going to tell you the good. Few of them are going to tell you the bad about their companies. As far as whether a particular company is good or bad for you or not, it depends on many factors. It depends on what it is you're looking to get. It depends on that being in alignment with what they're willing to offer. And it depends on their honesty and their reputation. You can do research on motor carriers and find out a lot of stuff about them, what kind of reputation that they have. You also need to look very, very hard at their training program. Okay, so I'll mention that again here in just a minute, but you want to choose a company that you can go to and stay with that company for 9 months to a year. You don't want to be jumping around from company to company. Pick a good company, go there with in mind that unless they're severely mistreating you or flat out lie to you about key things and they're mistreating you, short of that, you're going to stick it out and stay there for at least 9 months to a year. Ideally, somewhere between 1 and 2 years before you start looking around to hop ship. Okay, don't become a job hopper right out of the gate. You want to get somewhere that's good, get through their road training program or their finishing program, get out there making a living, driving a truck, and still learning. Your training and your learning never stops when you get into trucking. Going to school is part of it. Going to the finishing or the road training program is another part of it. And then that continues on as you continue to develop the skills on your own that you've learned up to that point. And I've been doing this almost 30 years and I'm still learning. Every day is a learning experience. And it's a good way to look at trucking that way. When you start thinking you know everything is when you're going to get hurt or you're going to hurt somebody else. So never become arrogant. Understand it from the time you start this, it is a never-ending learning process. Your training is never over. It doesn't end when you graduate school. It doesn't end when you graduate your company's training program. It doesn't end when you buy your own truck as an owner-operator. If you someday choose to do that, you are always needing to be looking at it as a learning experience from now on. So, all right. I do want to mention this about training. When you're talking about companies and their training programs, beware that there are many companies out there that will put you in a truck with another driver, often another inexperienced driver, maybe a driver that's only out of school for a month, 2-3 months themselves. It's still technically, in my opinion, a trainee. And yet they have assigned them a title of trainer, and they may be giving them a little bit of extra money to put you in the truck with them. And what they're really wanting to do is run you as a cheap team. The way to tell the difference is, it is one's experience. If your trainer has less than 9 months absolute minimum experience, then it's probably not a very good training program. Ideally, a trainer should have 2 years or more of driving experience, but they can be done 9 months to 12 months with a good train-to-trainer program. And that's the other thing. How much experience does your trainer have? And have they been through any specific training on how to be a road instructor or a driver trainer? Have they been trained to train you, or are they just a driver that's stuck in the truck with you with minimal experience? The way that you can really tell that is also is if a company allows that individual to ever get in the sleeper berth and sleep while you are operating the truck or backing or maneuvering. That's not a training program, in my opinion, and it should be avoided. Now, having said that, there's a lot of them that do that, including some big companies that ought to know better. But my advice is find one that has an actual training program. And that means when you're operating the truck, your trainer is in the jump seat or they're outside the truck, just like your instructor was at school, watching what you're doing, keeping an eye on things, helping you as necessary, and making sure you don't hit anything, until you get more time behind the wheel, that sort of thing. Just keep that in mind. Now, you have to make your own decisions, and yes, there are tens of thousands of people that go through these other inferior programs, and in spite of those programs being bad, most people do manage to survive. But there are some, sadly and unfortunately, that do not. There have been people killed when they have taken inexperienced drivers, paired them up as cheap teams, sent them out and had them do things that they're not yet skilled enough or experienced enough to do, and things have gone sideways. So it's your life, it's your career. You ultimately have to make your own decisions, but you have my opinion, and that is that you should find a quality company with a real training program and go through their training program and then stay with that company for at least 9 months to a year. So there you go. Make your own decisions, do your own homework, do whatever you want to do. Just make sure you're doing it with knowledge, forethought, and that you're making an informed decision. And last, I'll leave you with this. You need to you can sort of put this one back up toward the front if you want to. As you go into this, start working toward goals. What do you want out of truck driving? Is your end goal to be an owner-operator with your own authority? Is your end goal to someday own a fleet or a freight brokerage? What is it that you want to do? Now, I'm not suggesting, as I said earlier, don't go to truck driving school and come right out of it and say, go down to the bank and borrow some money and buy a truck and a trailer. That's a bad idea. But you can have that as a goal for further down the road. And then as you learn these other things, and then once you're out there doing a job, you're sitting at a shipper, sitting at the receiver, sitting at the truck stop, you can read books, you can take online courses, you can do other things to keep increasing your knowledge and keep educating yourself toward whatever it is that your ultimate goal is in trucking. And there's lots of things you can do in trucking, lots and lots of things. You can own your own company. You can move internal to a larger company as a dispatcher, as a customer service rep, as a safety assistant, as a safety director with training, as a personnel director, as operations manager. There's trucking is a massive industry. There are all kinds of things that you can do. You can become a trainer yourself when you have experience. Don't be a trainer with 3 months. Please don't do that. Get at least 9 months and then make sure you know what you're doing, and then get a company that's going to put you through a trainer course. But you can become a trainer if you want to do that. You can become an instructor. You could work at a CDL training school or internally with a motor carrier that has such a program. There are so many things you could do. You could start your own freight brokerage someday. So I'm not going to tell you what your goal should be, but you should have specific goals that you're working toward in this business. And, just map it out, A, B, C, D, step by step by step. And as you complete these other things, then you can start studying and learning and start working toward that next thing. Now, obviously, when you're first starting out, your first goal is to do all the things I just told you about, and then get out there actually doing this stuff. But once you're out there and you get a little time under your belt and you start to get a little bit more comfortable with it, as you're sitting in the truck stops, then it's time to start researching and learning about whatever specific other thing it is you want to do. A lot of people, that's becoming an owner-operator. There are other goals beyond that, but whether it's to become an owner-operator, it's to become a rolling recruiter or an in-house recruiter or some other trucking business owner, whatever the case may be, have some specific goals and start working toward those. I hope this has added at least a little bit of value to you, maybe answer some questions for you. I run a group called Trucking Business Success on Facebook. You're invited to come and join that for free. You have any questions, you can ask me in there. I have my own courses on Udemy. You certainly can take the courses. All my students have access to another private Facebook group where they can get in touch with me directly, and I check that one daily if there are questions and stuff that are in there. So there's all kinds of ways to get in touch with me. So, and regardless of that, like I said, if you never buy anything from me, that's fine. I want you to do well in trucking. And the key to that is to make sure that you're making informed and intelligent decisions that are in alignment with your situation and what it is that you want. So, till the next video, take care, be safe, and I'll talk to you again soon.